Good morning. In this week's parasha of Devarim, we start with an intriguing question about the way in which the location is described geographically. And our answer to that question is going to present us with another question. That answer is going to present us with another question. And we're going to come to a couple of very interesting conclusions. The parasha begins by saying, Elu ha-devarim asher diber Moshe al kol Yisrael. These are the words that Moshe commanded, that Moshe spoke to all of the Jewish people. Ba'aver hayardain, on the eastern side of the Jordan River, Bamidbar, in the wilderness, Ba'arava, on the plains of Moab, or the plains of Moab, Mulsuf, opposite the Sea of Reeds, Bain Paran uvein Tofel, between Paran and Tofel, V'Lavan v'Chatzerot v'Dizahav, and Lavan Chatzerot and Dizahav. So, at first glance, this is describing where they are geographically. But there are a number of problems with it. The first one is half these places we don't know where they are. They haven't been mentioned in the Torah before. Where's Lavan? Hasn't been mentioned. This place called Lavan. The second one is that a lot of these descriptions are contradictory. It says it was Bamidbar in the wilderness, and then it says Arava in the plains of Moab. The plains of Moab was not the wilderness, it was an inhabited area. The Midbar, the desert, the wilderness, is somewhere where people don't live. So this is a contradiction. Mulsuf, by the Red Sea, that's the Sea of Reed. That's got nothing to do with the desert and with the eastern side of the Jordan River, and so on. It's a hodgepodge list of places that doesn't cohere to identify a geographic location for us. So what's going on? So Rashi tells us from our sages that the point here is not, in fact, to identify the geographical location. Would have been sufficient to say Arvot Moab and the plains of Moab. We know exactly where that is. We've learnt about that several times in the Torah already. The point here is, he says, is that Moshe is rebuking the Jewish people. This whole speech to them is in fact a rebuke, and so he is rebuking them by mentioning the names of the places where they had sinned. So, for example, Bamidbar, when it speaks about in the desert, that is when they complain, saying, Mi yutain mutain b'midbar, if only we had died in the desert. One of the times they complained against Hashem. Arava, on the plains of Moab. What did they do on the plains of Moab? That was where they sinned with Baal Peor. Mulsuf, opposite the Sea of Reeds. What happened at the Sea of Reeds? They said, why are you going to throw us into the sea and kill us? Were there no graves in Egypt? And then they came out of the sea, where they said, just like we've survived, the Egyptians have survived, and they're still coming after us. Right? It's a review of all of these mistakes made over the 40 years. Between Paran and Tofel and Lavan, what are these places? So we have the manna, which was white, Iman, which was white, so that's Lavan, that they complained about Lavan. Chatzerot refers to the argument of Korach, the rebellion of Korach. Zahav, enough gold, but really more than enough gold. That refers to the golden calf. They had so much gold, they end up building a golden calf. So all of these places, so our question was, why are you telling us these places? No, they are not, it's not the location, it is the list of places where they'd made a mistake. So the next question is, why is Moshe saying that? Well, that's because he is rebuking them. Next question, that answers a new question. Well, if he's rebuking them, then why doesn't he just say it? Why say it in this roundabout, secretive way that, the place of Lavan and Dizahav means you sinned with the man and the golden calf. Say you sinned with the man and the golden calf. So Rashi also answers that. Rashi says, Chas al kvodan shel Yisrael, that Moshe had compassion for the honor of the Jewish people. In other words, he didn't want to embarrass or humiliate them by saying outright, by focusing outright on their sins, and therefore he said it in a fairly not obvious way. That it wouldn't be obvious that he's chewing them out, as the Americans say, that he's shouting at them, that he's rebuking them for the things that they've done wrong. So he's doing it in this low-key fashion, and that's why it's mentioned as place names, but really the intention is that it's a rebuke. Okay? So that answers a nice answer, but it raises another question. Because if you look just a little bit later, we're still in chapter 1, verses, here we go, verses 20, 20 onwards, that Moshe, they come to Kadesh Barnea, and Moshe says, all right, you ready to go into the land? They say, no, we want to send in spies. So Moshe says, all right, let's send in spies. And the spies go in, and they check out the land, and they get scared, and they come back, and you listen to them, and you mourn. He's not being low-key over here. He's not having compassion for their honor. He is not saying this rebuke in a subtle way. He's being very explicit about everything that went wrong. So Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says, if it's so important to do it in this subtle way, so why is he being so explicit and blatant over here? So the answer, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein gives a couple of answers. The first answer is a straightforward but very important one. Is he says, you get times when people get it, and you get times when they don't get it. Sometimes somebody just needs just a little hint, just a little something to tell them what they've done wrong, and once they've got it, they understand, message received, and they're going to go forward with that. Sometimes people don't understand. So sometimes somebody's done something wrong, and they know that what they've done is wrong. Right? But maybe they're not really motivated to change it. All you need to say to them is one word about this thing that they did. Right? And they understand what you're saying. Maybe they hadn't even realized what they were doing it, but once you mention to it, they know that it's wrong, fine. And some people will say to them, listen, it wasn't right what you did. They'll say, why not? You'll say, well, because of X, Y, Z. They'll say, I don't understand what the problem is. Right? And you've got to have a whole shir to actually cover it. And that's the first idea over here, is that when it comes to the sin of the spies, we'll see later on in Parashat Eikev, Moshe focuses on the golden calf. When it comes to those things, you need a great deal of education in order to even understand what you're doing wrong so that you can change it. When it came to these ones that we're mentioning at the beginning, as soon as you said it, yes, we understand. Yes, we understand. You did the wrong thing. I'm sorry. I'll make up for it. That's the first approach. The second approach, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says, is a fascinating one. He says when we have the full review of the spies and the full review of the golden calf, that is not a rebuke. That is a review of what happened to the previous generation. But when we begin the parasha over here, that is a rebuke. So that is an answer which raises another question in turn. What do you mean? Why is it a rebuke when we review what happened 40 years ago with the golden calf, but it's not a rebuke when we review what happened 40 years ago? I beg your pardon, it's not a rebuke with the golden calf, but it is a rebuke when we review what happened 40 years ago going into the Red Sea, that they didn't have this trust in Hashem. They are both referring to evils committed by the previous generation. So you're telling me that the one which is an explicit long review is not really a rebuke, it's a review. And the one where it's a short hint, right, that's really a rebuke. Rabbi Moshe Feinstein says yes. Because the rebuke here, rebuke is not only appropriate or necessary when somebody has done something wrong. It's even when they are likely to do something wrong. You see, when we talk or think about rebuke, we think of it as saying, listen, you've done the wrong thing. But what rebuke really is in its essence is setting somebody straight, is putting them on the straight path. Now maybe they need to be put on the straight path because they've already left the path. Or maybe they need to be put on the straight path because they're already heading off it. Or even that there is a concern that they're heading off it. Let's think about it with a car. You're driving on the car, you take the wrong turn. So now you're heading in the wrong direction. So we say, listen, you need to get back on to the onto the road. Fine. Sometimes you have somebody that they indicate that they're going off to the wrong turn. You say to them, no, you don't need to, that's not the right place to go. You need to go over here. And sometimes you have somebody who you don't know if they're really going to carry on in this road or go on the right road. Maybe they're going to go on the wrong one. So you need to say that to them as well. That all fits under this category of saying to people, this is the path that you need to be going on. This is the correct way to live in life. And that's something that you need to be very sensitive about. You need to be chas al kvodan shel Yisrael. You need to approach people with a sensitivity. People do not always like, surprisingly enough, people do not always like being told what to do. You need to come at this very sensitively and carefully. And that is the context of what he's saying over here. Yes, he is talking about what happened 40 years ago, but he's not saying it to review what happened. He is saying it because he believes that there is a clear danger that this generation may do the same thing, that this generation may repeat those sins, that they may not live with the kind of trust in Hashem, that they might fall lure to the temptations of prosperity and where that takes you. That's why he's reviewing it. He's reviewing it to tell them, to give them a lesson. But you need to be quite careful and subtle about it. Later on, when he's talking about the golden calf, he is reviewing what happened for the educational messages, but that is not direct rebuke. He's not directly telling them how they should be living their lives, and therefore he's able to be explicit. It's not as threatening or challenging to the person. So let's review what we've got and the questions and answers. The question was, why do we have all this whole list of place names which are contradictory and strange? The answer is it's a rebuke. Well, if it's a rebuke, why not just say it? The answer is it is done in a subtle way. Well, if it's done in a subtle way, why later on is it made so explicit? Two approaches here. Sometimes you need to be subtle and sometimes you need to be explicit. Or here it's a rebuke and so therefore it's subtle. Whereas later on where it's a review, it can be made explicit. So the real idea here is that we should take these lessons for our own life. That when we see that we are going off the path, or somebody that we care about has either made the wrong decision, about to make the wrong decision, or is likely to make the wrong decision, do what you can to help them out, but do it in a way that preserves their dignity and shows that you really have their best interests in heart, that you are righteous rather than self-righteous.